Our region's business is sponsored by PNC for the achiever in you, and by Burns & Scallow Roofing and Real Estate, dedicated to improving the profitability and sustainability of our clients. Visit our website to learn about the power of two. Our region's business: innovation, transformation, momentum, improving our communities and driving technologies that will shape our region for generations. The collaboration that brings vitality, prosperity, and life to living. Stay with us for the coming half hour as we examine in depth our region's business. Now, here's your host, Bill Flanagan.
Today on Our Region's Business, learning from the best when it comes to creating breakthrough products, plus an exit interview with the president of Carnegie Mellon University. But first, our region's multi-billion-dollar wastewater challenge and what to do about it. There's a sad reality none of us likes to think about. Pretty much every time it rains, raw sewage pours into our rivers. ALCOSAN is under an EPA consent decree to fix the problem, and the authority asked the Allegheny Conference to help by convening a blue ribbon panel to look at ways to encourage collaboration. Dr. Jared Cohon chaired the panel. He's the president of Carnegie Mellon University and a member of the board of the Allegheny Conference, which co-produces this program, I should mention. Welcome. Good to see you, Dr. Cohon.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good to be here.
The numbers are kind of staggering. We've heard a lot. This is a big issue for the region.
It's a really big issue. At least $3 billion, probably quite a bit more than that. And it's a real problem. As you said in the intro, every time it rains, it overwhelms our system, our ability to collect and to treat sewage, and we have to discharge raw sewage right into the rivers.
Okay, so ALCOSAN's been working on the engineering side of this. They went out in response to the EPA, came back with what, a $2 billion plan to address a $3 billion plus problem?
Something like that. You know, it's really hard to say just what it's going to cost. We know billions is right. But the key thing is ALCOSAN is kind of limited in what they're able to do. They serve 83 villages, towns, whatever we call them, locales, political districts, but they don't really control them. And one of the big problems is, in this problem, we have to think of it as a system, if you know what I mean. It's one big system. But ALCOSAN, who's responsible for treating all this, can't really control what happens in the part of the system. That adds costs. It also doesn't make it as, the impact of the fixes will not be as great either.
So we have this ALCOSAN, which is where it all winds up, but there's what, like 80 or so 83 different municipal sewer systems, authorities, whatever.
Just in Allegheny County.
Just in Allegheny County. I understand that's not even all of Allegheny County.
That's right. There's a little bit of Allegheny County that doesn't even cover.
Okay, so that poses some problems. So what exactly did your task force look at?
Right. So first of all, the task force was made up of a group that broadly represented the county and all the various interest groups, communities, those who actually handle the sewage, ALCOSAN itself, of course, people who care about water quality. So it's very broadly represented. And we recommended a handful of things, but we think they're very important. First off, and most important, I think, is the way we govern the system. There's a board of 7 people. 5 of them come from the city. But this is a board overseeing ALCOSAN, which is responsible for these 83 communities.
And now most of the people in the county live outside the city instead of inside the city, right?
So these communities, understandably, don't feel as represented on the ALCOSAN board as they feel they should be. And they're right. And our committee agreed with them. And one of our key recommendations then is that get changed, that the governance system, the board composition, be changed.
Okay, and then I understand there's also a recommendation for the county itself to take more direct responsibility for this?
Yes. In fact, and this is very much in line with Rich Fitzgerald's own thinking, the idea of creating a full-time wastewater coordinator position within the county. Someone who every day comes to work thinking about this problem and owns the problem and leads the problem. That's also a very good idea, something that we're strongly in favor of.
And this is somebody who's got a really long view, because I take it this is not an overnight fix.
I'll tell you, it's not an overnight fix. This is typical of large-scale water problems. They usually take decades to solve, and this won't be an exception.
I wanted to talk about governance at ALCOSAN itself, so that can be looked at as an entity, and the idea that county has a role to play to provide leadership, but you've also got, what, different pieces of what's essentially or could be an integrated system owned by lots of different players. Is that a challenge as well?
Precisely, and that was the point I was trying to make at the outset. It can be complicated, but the way I think about it is, imagine you were building or designing a car, and someone was responsible for and owned the brake system, and you were responsible for and owned the steering system, and someone else the gas tank. And each of you makes your own decisions about brakes, about steering, about gas tank, and then you got to slap it together and hope the thing works. That's no way to design a car. It's no way to design and manage a wastewater system. And that's exactly right. So each of these pieces is owned by one of these 83 communities, but they're all connected. So the wastewater that comes from my community flows downstream to your community into your pipes.
And so is there some opportunity to share some of those facilities as well?
Exactly right. Yeah. So we recommend, first of all, that the big so-called trunk lines, these are just bigger sewers that carry the wastewater from more than one source, that those be owned by ALCOSAN itself instead of by the local communities. That's step one. We also think that any so-called wet weather control facilities, these are like storage tanks inside the system, those should also belong to ALCOSAN because these are the key components of the system that you were referring to before that one entity needs to be able to control, and that should be ALCOSAN. So that's crucial. But beyond that, we think that the communities that border each other should look for opportunities to consolidate further their own systems. And I think people really want to do that because they realize they can save money by doing that.
Well, and that was my other question. My last question is, if we do all this, if we get really smart about this, can we cut that multi-billion-dollar price tag?
Certainly. We have no idea how much. We just can't tell at this stage, but it definitely will be cheaper. It makes sense, and all of our history with water systems shows that something that you're planning to do with two things, if you can do it with one bigger thing, that's going to be cheaper, and it's going to work better.
All right. Well, a lot to think about, a lot to work on in the years ahead. Hopefully it'll do a lot of good and ultimately keep our rivers cleaner than ever. Dr. Jerry Cohon from Carnegie Mellon, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And next up, Dr. Cohon will be back with us for something of an exit interview. Stay with us.